Hey guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena. Today we're back over on our YouTube account and we are going to be breaking down, that is right, the September tier list is already here. So of course we have a couple additions to this, including the awakened version of Iran. Gonna have to see exactly where he places in this tier list. And honestly, when it comes to him specifically, it seems like it's really too early to know exactly where he places, but we have a general rule of where we put them, and I'm going to show you just a minute over on Tier List Maker. Now, of course, when it comes to him, it's because we haven't seen the iterations of the Cursed Realm, of the Nightmare Corridor, of the Treasure Scramble to see exactly where and if the awakened version of Iran is being utilized. So if you're currently building out another awakened hero that is higher on the tier list, that has already been kind of tried and true, go ahead and continue building on those. So let's take a look over at this tier list. All right, guys, so here is the tier list. Now, this, of course, is the September. Kind of crazy to think that it is already September at this point. But let's start at the top left, just like we always do. Liberta, that's right. Still the absolute #1 priority when you look at every aspect of AFK Arena. Liberta is there. Every team, everywhere, every Treasure Scramble, Nightmare Corridor, Cursed Realm, even in the Temple Rift. Everywhere this hero is being utilized, and of course, works incredibly well in conjunction with Lucilla, which is the reason it remains her in the SSS tier. And in addition, though, with Lucia specifically, there are a lot of formations that run her outside of Liberta. So she even has a lot of utility being run outside of them two together, which does really kind of make it seem crazy. Now, you'll notice that we also do have the awakened version of Shamira in here. Again, utility-wise, being used everywhere. When it comes to a hero, requires a little bit of a higher build-out due to the fact that HP is what is most important there, but the SP effect is working again. Most content, she is being used in the entirety. Same with the awakened version of Athalia when it comes to burst damage, the SP effect. When you look at utility, these heroes in this top tier are being used everywhere and will continue to be used everywhere that we do see heroes. Now, we do have Demia. Demia, of course, cheat death, does a lot of damage, a lot of support as a mage, works incredibly well. Then we do have Lavatune in here. Lavatune still on the buffing aspect. When you look at any team, you could drop Lavatune in there as a support. Does incredibly well. Utility through the roof in every single game mode. Same with Leica. Now, it's interesting with Leica because she can play kind of the support role to a DPS, still doing a considerable amount of DPS herself, but there are a lot of formations where the awakened version of Leica is the best in slot for the team and is the primary damage dealer on the team. So again, a lot of utility with this hero, making her really staying in that SSS tier. Now, SS tier, the second tier right here, we have Gavis in here. Now, the thing with Gavis, very similar to what we see with Hildwyn, what we see with Rimuru, is the support aspect for the heroes, amplifying the damage that they're doing, but more of a mage playing a support hero, but does work incredibly well with utility. When you start looking at higher game modes, when you start looking at, scaling with the enrage timer, works incredibly well, which is the same right here with Rimuru. Doing incredibly well in that support role, very similar, where if you look at utility, if you look at, not being a primary damage dealer, still having a ton of utility in a bunch of different formations. Same is true with Amelia with the instant crowd control energy regeneration, works super, super well. Now, looking at Jerome with the ability to buff up the team itself, it's kind of crazy because looking at, again, bigger picture, some of the sports, so thinking of Jerome, thinking of Ivan, thinking of a lot of those regulars that we see like Palmer, a lot of the support heroes are literally and can be put in and swapped out in a multitude of formations to amplify the damage that we see of these primary damage dealers. Even thinking of a hero like Jerome that can buff up the awakened version of Belinda, but can also be used in a lot of other formations. Now, you'll notice in here as well, Lan is in the SS tier. That is right. Moved past Gwen, moved past Hildwyn. We are now seeing Lan in every single aspect, making him the absolute #1 highborn priority to build is now Lan. I know Hildwyn, and if you're newer to AFK Arena, Lan is going to be your focus. Hildwyn overall, if you got the free copies, great, you got him, you can use him. But of course, when it comes to the damage itself, really playing that support role again with Lan and the way that Lan does it, it's crazy the scaling that this Draconic hero has. Going in through Aethys, Aethys is a very tried and true tank. Again, utility-wise, has a ton of utility, has a lot of crowd control, can hold heroes in place That way, heroes like Rimuru and even the Awakened version of Belinda that are just kind of the squishier ones. We see him run a lot with the Awakened version of Lucius. Does work incredibly well because of the crowd control aspect that he can provide. Rem still dishing out and still best in slot in a lot of different formations. PvP with Ulna still running very, very strong. Naruko's another one, tank, but plays support and healing and shielding and damage. Naruko is one that if you're building her out, does incredibly well. And in addition, Mauler Tower requirement, 100% absolutely need that Mauler Tower hero in there. Now, Shuna, again, another support hero doing incredibly well at exactly what she does. Lucius, best in slot in a couple different teams. Damage-wise, requires, again, a very, very high build out of Lucius. I believe I even built him to like a 72 engraving because, of course, the higher you're stacking the stats, his SP effect will transfer them into attack, into crit, into everything else, amplifying exactly what this hero can do. The Awakened version of Sophia, now again, as another Mauler hero, big priority to build, just because, again, that support, the ability to shield, the ability to heal, to do a little bit of damage, everything comes with the hero. Now, Eugene is one that we did get for free. Eugene still being and really seeing a lot of gameplay, including PvP, which is pretty interesting. Gwen still running best in slot in a bunch of formations, but again, very similar to what we see with some other heroes. The Awakened version of Lucius, similar to Gwen, as in they need a massive build out. When you think of the Draconic version of Gwen, it's not Awakened. The Draconic version of Gwen requires you to have a minimum of 1 star with the engraving on there, and of course the graving 60 or higher because of the damage calculating and the way that the hero works. We tried it without engraving. We did 3 billion damage in the Cursed Realm. We engraved her. We did 16 billion damage in the Cursed Realm. Kind of incredible to see. Now, the Awakened version of Solus still being used. Trishia is really a backup. I feel like Trishia probably should be a little bit lower, but as of now, still staying a little bit of a top tier. But when you think of the towers, when you think of specifically the 4 main factions, Trishia absolutely 100% required in the Wilder Tower to make your progression, as well as some other heroes. So we get into the S tier. Now this, of course, kind of rounds out the rest of the heroes that you want to prioritize early game to AFK Arena. So looking at Vatheo, again, damage dealer as a buffer does incredibly well. Adrian and Lise does good. If you want to build them up to a 30, does well. 40 signature item is where the sweet spot is if you're really trying to min-max. Hilduin, survivability-wise, again, not doing a lot of damage with Hilduin, but survivability-wise does incredibly well. Awakened version of Baden, unfortunately, sliding down just a little bit. Moved from the SS tier, moved down 1 tier. And the Awakened version of Antandra, if you build her out, unfortunately not seeing the utility that we really hoped with this hero. Now, Nyla is interesting as a support hero, a Draconic hero. We are actually seeing her as a couple different formations in the Cursed Realm Nightmare Corridor. Some use in the Treasure Scramble, but again, kind of a niche formation. But overall, still seeing some utility, still seeing with the addition of Lan and with the addition of Melion that we are still seeing, again, a little bit of damage in there. We have Tamaris just as a buffer. Kelthin's another one, very interesting. So when you think of the Hypo Tower, Kelthin is now probably one of the best in slot heroes we have in there, being able to carry teams by himself, which makes him really important, but also being used in a bunch of different other formations, not as the primary damage dealer, but more of a secondary damage dealer. Now, Villanelle is in here, another one. I feel like players are severely underestimating Villanelle and exactly what she can do. Mauler faction towers absolutely required. Then we look at Rosaline, of course, boosting anybody up. Ulna still has the cheat death and the immunity. We are seeing Ulna run with Rem still. We are seeing Ulna with the Awakened version of Lucius. Any hero that essentially is going to be a little bit squishier and die a little bit faster, we are running Ulna in there. Rain as a booster, Lady Simona. Again, Lady Simona in the Awakened version of Shmira still being run. And honestly, Lady Simona still does a considerable amount of damage. Rowan is in here, of course, as a support hero. Then Misha shows up. So Misha is in the S tier. If you've built her out, and if you use her, again, requires a little bit of a build out. But when you have her built with the plus 20 signature item, but the 9 of 9 furniture is where it's very important, is getting her built out a little bit. We are starting to see her in a lot of different formations. Mortis, again, as a buffer if you do have build. Scarlet still being used in the Nightmare Corridor. Iran, again, Nightmare Corridor. Silas, again, slowly kind of slipping down as we continue to get more support heroes and the scaling of the support heroes kind of go further. Seems like we're going to see him used a little bit less and less. Then we have Matria in here, and then getting into the A. So this is exactly where we parked the Awakened version of Iran as it sits today, sitting right at the very top of the A tier, because again, utility-wise, we haven't seen where he's going to shine. We haven't seen exactly where he's going to be used. Only time will tell in what iterations. I believe the current Nightmare Corridor we're seeing right now on the test server, he is being used, but the Curse Realm, he's being used. Nightmare Corridor, he's not. Now, the thing with him, and the one thing to note before you run out and build him, is the ability to do damage to multiple targets. When you think of the tornado, when you think of the way that he works, if you're running 5 enemies, yes, you can get the damage scale. You can put it through the roof. If he's at one target, so if he's fighting one boss, the damage isn't there. The damage doesn't scale because, of course, the damage and really the amplification factor is coming from multiple targets being stuck in that tornado and doing damage to 5 different targets at once versus just the one target like we see. So again, I feel like some iterations we are going to see him in kind of niche formations, but overall we have to see exactly where he does land. Then we have the twins in here. Again, a little bit of a less utility. Raul, for a very, very hot minute, was used in a formation. I don't think he's used anywhere anymore, as we see a lot of these heroes starting to go through the A tier, and I'm not going to go through all of them. Kind of point out a few that we still kind of see the niche formations working incredibly well. So thinking of a few, even currently, Nightmare Corridor, there's a formation that is running the Awakened version of Thane. We have one that is running Bron down here. Melion, really, honestly, the A tier might be a little bit lower, but the reason being he buffs up and really is focused on the Draconic heroes, which most players don't have build. Even a lot of whales are not building them, which is kind of crazy to think. But yeah, not seeing as much utility out of him. And then, of course, a hero like Vika. Vika is still being used in 1 or 2 niche formations. Again, best in slot, highest damage dealer with those little gyros that she has. But overall, once she drops or is replaced in the damage dealing formation, we're probably not going to see her anymore or used again. Mauler Tower, yes, you could definitely see her. But heroes like Kanisa and Rook, and even heroes like Joan. Joan still has an incredible amount of utility, and she's much easier to get. When you think of the shop, Joan is the priority, still the #1 priority to get out of the shop. So again, as a support hero, as a hero that is relatively cheaper to build and get copies of, Joan fits the bill in a lot of different formations. And even when you start thinking of subbing formations and Treasure Scramble and everything else, these heroes do work incredibly well. Looking at the B tier, these are heroes that, short of the tower, probably not being used anywhere. I know there's a whale formation right now that has Cassius, but again, most players don't have Cassius built to the point that you're going to see a lot of effectiveness in there. Still, we might see with the introduction of additional Draconic heroes, some more Awakened heroes, that we see a little bit more utility. Then we get into our C tier. These heroes, again, maybe short of the tower, not used anywhere else. Most of these not even used maybe as a filler in the tower. But these are heroes, of course, once upon a time that had major SSS utility. Even looking at Lucy, looking at Ainz, looking at a couple other heroes, they used to dominate AFK Arena, and now, unfortunately, they don't. Then we get into the bottom tier, which we know is the Walker tier. There is a hashtag to make Walker great again, but I don't think it's going to happen. But overall, the C and the D tier are not going to be your focuses by any means. So even when you think bigger picture at what heroes are you putting in the wish list, how are you building them out, there are a lot of the primary 4 faction heroes that are really the build. Looking at the engraving, thinking of the furniture, thinking of, really the SSS tier, this top tier, the SS, and then this S tier. These really 3 are going to be the primary focus, even looking at the A tier as the filler tier. But that is where you are going to find the sweet spot, and those are the heroes that you're going to really build. Some of the ones, again, you could find a niche one-off here and there, but again, easier to be replaced by some of the heroes. I don't want to build one hero personally. That is just going to be a niche hero and not going to be used anywhere else. That we're not seeing a lot of utility. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's video. This is the September tier list. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and as always, thank you guys for watching.